Oh, that's sweet. I bet you were thinking Tiger Woods, weren't you? That's what I was visualizing. But Tiger Woods does more than just go to the driving range. Tiger Woods does other things that make him a great golfer, a great athlete. Things like running, weightlifting. He even has a nutritionist. Who knows, he may have a mantra that somebody, some guru in India gave him that makes him meditate better and concentrate better on his game. But all these kinds of things are indirect. They're related to golf, but not really, because other people in other sports or other kinds of fields of endeavor would also benefit from these things. But so he does it so he can do what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, as it needs to be done. So he didn't have to think, oh, I'm tired now, I can't hit this shot. Or I'm not strong enough to hit the ball out of the deep rough. And that's very much like we as leaders, and as we are trying to get other people to live their lives in such a way that they will be able to do what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, as it needs to be done. And this is through the law of indirectness. So just when I exercise, my body begins to perspire, my heart rate increases, the vessels and arteries in my body begin to expand, my heart as the main muscle begins to exercise. All of these things happen, and they are good. They make it possible for me to do the things that I need to do. And as Christians, the goal is it's like Tiger. His goal is not to become the world's greatest weightlifter. He's not trying to become the world's greatest nutritionist or the world's greatest runner. As a believer, I'm not trying, when I spiritually exercise, I'm not trying to become the world's longest prayer, the world's biggest giver, the most silent Christian on the planet, the person who is alone and has solitude more than any other or serves more than any other. No, all these things are tools that God gives us so that we can actually do what needs to be done when God calls upon us, so that it is something that is part of our nature, it's part of our character. And that's where we want to start out, with this idea of leadership, and leadership being a good example. Now I'm going to hit a few more shots here. This is the pitching wedge. Now I want to show you what I got with, let's say, a 5-iron. So let's see what I can do with a 5-iron. Okay, this should go about 100 and 190 yards. Like 250 yards, maybe, something like that. Let's see. Requires a little bit more discipline. Ooh, that's pretty good. Right down the middle, just like I wanted to do it. But we're talking about the inner life, and it doesn't seem like this is very contemplative, what I'm doing here, even though some people think that golf is the way to go to church. I don't know, I've never been more unhappy than when I'm playing golf, so I like to be happy in church. I like to have a pleasant experience. But the issue of the development of the inner life has to do with exercising ourselves in areas that are related but not directly related. And I think about the inner person. In our manic society that we've been discussing, and I've been pounding on in this module in particular, is that it all begins with connecting with God. Have you ever got that feeling that you're not really connected to God? Psalm 23, the first verse, really is what convicted me of that. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I discovered that I wanted an awful lot of things, that I was a needy person, and that I needed to learn to connect with God. And so the 23rd Psalm became my guide. It led me on this personal inner journey. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. What that really is saying is that being quiet and being alone with Him. And like a sheep is nourished by still waters rather than rapid waters, by grass in order to eat, to receive the nourishment. And then it goes on to say, He restores my soul. The restoration of the soul means that it returns to where it really belongs, and that is near the heart of God. And so when I'm nourished that way, it's life transformational. It changes everything. And over a period of time, as I made myself available to God, to hear His voice, to see His beauty, to taste His goodness, that was what happened to me. And then it goes on to say, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, yes, even though I'm going to have challenges in my life, even though I'm going to have difficulty, what happens is that I'm not afraid, because God has not promised to keep me free from problems. I mean, death is almost a promise that we have. We know that we're going to die. We know that we're going to be in His presence. So God isn't saying, well, you're not going to get sick, you're not going to die, you're not going to suffer, because that's all part of what being human is. But what He's really saying is, I'm going to hold your hand as you walk through this valley. I'm going to trust, you're going to trust me, and you're not going to be afraid. And then He has this beautiful image of how when I'm at rest and when I'm connected with God and I live in that relinquished life, He says, He prepares for me a great meal or feast in the presence of my enemies. That means that out here in the darkness, here I am, let's say on a safari. This is the image that I always think of. I'm on a safari, and it's evening, and I'm going to have a sumptuous meal out there on the safari, but all around me are the luminous eyes of the wild beast. There they are. There's the seductive power of prestige. And over here, the temptation of taking charge and control and making things happen. You know, a friend of mine said that one day he decided not to make anything else happen. And when he said that, I actually laughed at him. I was really uncertain. What are you talking about? Everybody has to make things happen. But he said, no, he never wrote a book. He never gave a lecture. That he never did anything that the Holy Spirit wasn't prompting him to do, and that other people normally ask him to do. And so the inner life is one in which we train our soul. We train our soul to be responsive to God. It becomes a restored soul. It becomes a satisfied soul. And then as what happens is, then we can say with the psalmist, with David, that He anoints my head with oil. My cup runs over, because we're looking at life in a new and different way. And we see the things, even the disappointments, as His blessing and His presence in our life. And then knowing that I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So when you think about developing your inner life, think about the idea that most of what we do to develop it is not related to the very thing we're doing, because we're not really trying to become longer prayers or bigger givers or greater evangelists. We're trying to become the kind of people inside where discipleship really takes hold, and then we affect people from our character.